Okay, so this second project we're going to do is going to be for you guys to do a dream chair, or just to make an illustration of a chair that is basically highly functional. But of course, if you want to do it very imaginative, that's fine too. I did give you guys some a size constraint in terms of how big it could be. I don't want you to go too crazy with it. But I think it was at least, it could be no wider than 6 feet, no deeper than 4 feet, and no taller than 8 feet. So I just want to show in this first demo just some real basics about SketchUp. One of the things about SketchUp when you first get started is, for me, it's almost essential to have all of my tools visible. So whenever you start in SketchUp, to get all of your tools visible, you're going to go to View. And this is the same, well, it's a little bit different if you're on a Mac or a PC. You have to arrange them a little bit differently on a Mac, but still the same rules. Just go to View, Toolbars, and here you can select which of the toolbars you want to see. By default, the large tool set is not on. You need to turn that on. Some of the tools are repeated in both places, but some of the ones you do need are in the large tool set. Sometimes layers, maybe later, we'll deal with that. Sometimes measurements are useful to see. And also views. Views are real useful for arranging things. If you work with multiple objects or multiple grouped objects, it's essential to have your views so you can real easily access those and use them. So, but to get started, just to show you some basic stuff about SketchUp, one of the main tools for moving around your POV is going to be this Orbit tool. And of course, if I click and move that, that's going to move my my POV around. Also, this hand tool. Anytime I get to a POV or an orbit that I like, I can adjust that further with that hand tool by clicking and holding down. But let's say I was going to go ahead and start and build the footprint for the object that I'm going to build. And again, I just want to show y'all some basics. The basic tools to do like a rectangle to start this with is right here. And what I'm going to do is click. And notice when I click right there, down here in the center here, it shows dimensions. You can do this manually, or you can just try to drag it out. I prefer to try to do it with this toolbar here. And once your object is active, I haven't generated this object yet, but what I can do is go directly to my keyboard. So I want this object to be 6 foot wide. So I'm just going to start typing, just 6, and my little symbol for foot is that little deal right there. And then I'm going to put a comma, and then I want it to be 4 foot deep. So again, I'm going to put a little comma there, and then I'm going to do enter. And that makes that object there. But I want to check to see if this object is actually on the ground. It is not. Look, so I didn't draw that correctly on the ground. So let me try that again. And again, that's what's good about being able to use your different points of view to see what's actually going on. So I'm going to try this again. This time I'm actually going to start on the correct plane, on the flat surface. And even though I've completed that object, I'm still going to go right back to my keyboard, not clicking anywhere, but just 6. And it adjusts that object to that size. So that's what we're looking for. But now I want to give it a height of 8 feet. So now I'm going to go to my push-pull tool, and I'm going to go right on top of this object and click. And notice again over here in my measurements, it's showing the height that I'm coming to. But before I get to the height that I need, again, I'm just going to go to the keyboard and put 8 and that little guy, and then enter. And that's going to push that up to my height. That's real useful if you're trying to do that manually. You know, it can be real frustrating trying to get that exactly. So do be aware you can use that little area right there to get the exact measurements of what you want. So I'm going to get rid of that little piece that I drew down there underground. And again, that's one of the problems with SketchUp that you're going to have to sort of overcome. The way that you can get rid of anything like that you made is with your eraser tool. And I've got to get rid of the lines first, and then it'll get rid of the interior area there. Something else that's real useful when I'm using multiple objects or working on multiple objects is changing my camera view. Right now I'm looking at this in perspective. Like we live in a world that's based on perspective view. Objects narrow as they get further away from us, as they recede in the distance. But if you want something to look squared off, I guess you could call it, you want to choose in terms of your camera view the parallel projection. And by doing that, you see it looks a little wonky right there. Whereas if this was perspective, these lines would actually be coming together. But this is more useful when I try to look at this object from overhead. A lot of when you start to move objects around, you're going to actually do from overhead. And just as an example, showing how we can move these objects around, and also looking at objects with parallel perspective from the top or the front or the side, you can see how even it is. It makes a lot more sense this way. So if I want to select this object and move the entire object, what I'm going to do is just with my main selection tool is drag a selection box, a box select, all the way around that object. And then if I want to move it, there's a couple of ways I can move it, but the best and primary way is just with your move tool. And what I'm going to do is actually, when you do try to move it, don't actually grab the object and try to move it. Actually use your X, Y, and Z axes. So I've got a blue axis right here, which is my up and down axis. And right here I've got a green axis. So instead of grabbing the object, I'm going to grab the axes that I want to move it along. You know, X, Y, or Z. So I'm going to go on the green one here. And since I'm clicking there, it's stuck on that axis. And that's the best way to try to do that. Let me show you that from the top. You know, and it's a little bit easier to see. So if I want to move this selected object on that axis, click here and just take it along there. Also, another way you can do it is with your keyboard. You can constrain axes that you want to move an object around. Your keyboard has directional keys, up, down, left, and right. If I click any of those, it's going to constrain the object on whichever axis you're clicking. So if I do my left keyboard directional key, hold it down, and then move it, it's only going to move the object on that axis. So again, you know, that's real useful when you're trying to work with multiple objects. Let's say I'm going to copy this object. And right now this is just a bunch of selected faces and edges. It's not a component yet. We'll look at turning this into a component in a second, but components are real interesting to work with too. But the good thing about components is they're grouped. Right now this object that I'm working with is not grouped. So if I were to put it with something else, it would not be very easy to move it apart. But let's just say if I copied this, you know, edit copy, edit paste in place. So I've got two objects there right now, so how do I grab it? It's a great use of the move tool. Again, I'm going to just click on this red axis. Okay, that did not work. I grabbed both of them, I think. Let's see. Let me try edit, just paste. Yeah, by doing just edit paste, I'm able to place that object. But I want to check it to see if they're even. Yeah, they are both on the same plane. This one is still selected. So again, I can grab that plane and move that a little bit. But when you guys get started with this first project is intended for you just to get comfortable with this environment. This stuff that I'm showing you right here, this is some real basic stuff that can save you some headaches. You saw how easily I placed that form underground, you know, below the ground basically. So, by using these techniques, setting your camera to a parallel projection and also using the move tool, it can be a lot less frustrating as you're trying to work with multiple objects. I haven't turned these into components yet. Let me go ahead and do that. Turning this into a component basically makes it an object, and it keeps it together, because if I started working on this object and I grabbed just that one edge right there, and I can't really move it if I just grab it right there, the object can basically be broken apart. So long story short, it's better to make these grouped objects into components. And to do that, all you got to do is use the old right click and make that a component. I could title this, let's just say chair proto 1 or something like this. Sometimes in Sketchup you'll see objects that always face the camera as you're using the orbit tool. This is where you would select that as you are working on a component or editing it. But I'm just going to do create without doing that. And but if I wanted to do some work on this component, you have to go into an edit mode on the component. To do that, all you got to do is just double click on that object. Once you're double clicked on it, you're able to work on that object at that point. So let's say I wanted to go ahead and start doing some stuff on my chair. I'm going to first show you how I would do this from the side. Basically in SketchUp, you can draw on the face of anything. And a lot of these things that I'm going to draw here, it's okay as you're just sort of sketching this out, that these parts overlap. Let's say if I wanted to give this the illusion of cushions, give it a little bit of form. On and on and on. Even if I wanted to do squiggly, more random forms. Basically think about this as if it was a big block of marble. You would start sketching on this marble, not on all sides at first, but just one side at first, until you start finding some of the areas that you actually want to put some of the forms that you're working on. But you'll get to a point where you need to clean it up. So those are real basic tools. One of the other basic tools for doing some stuff is your offset tool. With the offset tool, and that's going to make trouble right there. Let's say this area. Whoa! Control Z, undo that. Some of these are going to make too much work. It probably is going to be something you want to detail later. But a lot of these overlapped, a lot of these marks that I made. But to clean it up before I actually start doing some extrusions and stuff like that, just go back with your eraser tool. Find some of the lines that you do want to work with. But then you'll get to a point where you want to get rid of some of the other parts of what you've designed. And that's where you can just use the extrude tool. Not only with the extrude tool can you extrude stuff, but I don't know if it's a word, but you can detrude things. Make the extrusions go all the way away. So what I'm going to do is select this surface and just push it until it gets back on that back wall. And it'll give you a little warning when it gets on that back wall. And what will happen once it gets there, and you don't want to go past it because you'll start re-extruding the other direction. It gets a sort of glossy look when you're on the back face. Just click there and it disappears. Sometimes it doesn't disappear, but what you need to do at that point is just click it and select it, and you can erase it. And this demo is about over. I can only do about 15 minutes here. But those are some of the very basics. Start working on your design just from the front. Do work with sketches. Work with thumbnails rather than just sort of designing willy-nilly. Let's see. But again,